AITA for getting upset when my husband kept testing me on date night, even though he knows it ties into my childhood trauma? Plus 4 updates. I, 34F, have been married to my husband, 36M, for 7 years, and we've been together for almost a decade. We have 2 young kids, and like most parents, our day-to-day life can get chaotic: work, school runs, laundry, errands. It often feels like our marriage lives in the margins of everything else. That's why I try to be intentional about carving out date nights. For context, I was raised in a family where love often looked like judgment dressed up as help. My dad in particular had this way of making everything feel like a test. He'd quiz me on facts at the dinner table, interrupt my stories to correct tiny details, or act like my opinions were something to disprove. If I didn't know an answer, he'd smirk or go into a lecture about how people should be more prepared. As a kid with aphantasia, I can't form mental pictures. This was extra hard. Memorization, recalling faces, remembering tiny details from books or movies, all of that takes way more effort for me than for most people. My dad didn't believe me when I tried to explain. Instead, he treated my struggle as laziness or stubbornness. I grew up walking on eggshells, bracing for the next pop quiz that would prove I wasn't good enough. Fast forward to adulthood, I've done therapy, I'm a good mom, I built a life I'm proud of. But the old scars don't vanish. When someone close to me treats conversation like a test, it hits a raw nerve. I get flooded with the same panicky, small, humiliated feeling I had as a child. Now to my marriage. My husband is, on paper, a good man. He works hard, he loves our kids, he's never cheated, and he doesn't drink or gamble. But in our relationship dynamic, he often defaults to being checked out. He'll scroll on his phone during dinner, forget to plan birthdays or anniversaries, or say whatever you want whenever I ask him to take initiative. He can be charming, funny, and attentive when he wants to, which is probably why I fell in love with him. But lately, I feel like I'm carrying the entire emotional weight of the marriage. This brings me to the night in question. A couple of weeks ago, I arranged a babysitter, picked a restaurant, made the reservation, and even set out clothes for him so we wouldn't be late. I was genuinely excited because we haven't had a real date in months. We sit down, order drinks, and I'm thinking, finally, some adult connection time. I start telling him about this article I read that really resonated with me. And suddenly, out of nowhere, he interrupts with, "Okay, pop quiz, what's the author's name?" I laugh nervously and say, "I don't remember, but that's not the point." He smirks, "You always do this. You bring stuff up but can't back it up with details. So how do I even know if it's legit?" Right there, I felt my chest tighten. It was like being 10 years old at the dinner table again. I tried to brush it off and steer the conversation back, but he kept going. He quizzed me on which website I read it on, what date it was published, whether I could summarize the author's background. Each time I stumbled, he leaned back with this grin that felt way too close to my dad's old smirk. I finally snapped and said, "Can you please stop? You know this triggers me." Instead of apologizing, he rolled his eyes and said, "Oh my God, not everything is about your trauma. I was just joking around. You're way too sensitive." I spent the rest of the meal picking at my food while he scrolled through his phone between courses. On the drive home, I tried to explain again, "When you quiz me like that, it feels cruel. It feels like you're deliberately poking at something I've worked so hard to overcome." He shot back with, "You can't expect me to tiptoe around everything. If you can't handle a little teasing, that's your problem, not mine." That night ended with me crying in the bathroom while he fell asleep watching TV. Since then, I've been stuck in this loop of second-guessing myself. Part of me feels guilty, like maybe I'm being too sensitive, maybe I should just laugh along and not let it get to me. Another part of me is angry, because I've told him so many times that these tests cut deep, and he keeps doing it. I don't expect him to be perfect, but I do expect empathy. Is that unreasonable? I plan our dates, manage our household, raise our kids, keep track of birthdays and holidays, and the one night I ask for real connection, he turns it into a quiz show that leaves me feeling small and stupid. Now he's acting normal, like nothing happened, and I'm the one left with this heavy knot of hurt. So Reddit, am I the asshole for getting upset when my husband kept testing me on date night, even though he knows it ties into my childhood trauma? Or am I overreacting and making too much of this? Relevant comments. Commenter, "NTA, you're not wrong for being conflicted. You're carrying a ton, single mom, Financial stress, an ex who's being decent now but wasn't before. It makes sense your body reacts with gratitude and even intimacy, but that doesn't erase the history. You're not using him just because you appreciate what he is doing now. You're a human who's lonely and overwhelmed. What is important is recognizing that intimacy doesn't equal reconciliation unless you both sit down and make that choice. Right now, it sounds more like survival plus comfort than true reconciliation. Don't beat yourself up. Commenter, AITA, soft. I don't think you're a monster, but yes, it's kind of an asshole move to let things slide into intimacy if you're not actually committed to working on the relationship. Your ex is putting in effort with the kids and helping you out financially, that's great. But if he thinks intimacy equals reconciliation while you see it as comfort/relief, that's unfair to him. Either set boundaries, no intimacy unless you're serious, or be honest about what's going on. Right now it reads like mixed signals. Update 1. So I finally brought it up with him. I told him I noticed how he keeps testing me, like with the flowers, or saying something loaded and then brushing it off. I said it's making me feel like I'm under some sort of constant exam. He immediately laughed and said, "Testing? You make it sound so serious. I was just teasing you. You're being too sensitive again." That hit me harder than I expected. Because if it is just teasing, why do I always end up crying in the bathroom after? Why does it feel like I've been failing something invisible? I pushed a little more and asked him why he feels the need to do these things, like, what's the point? And he said, if you really knew things, if you were really as intuitive as you say you are, you wouldn't get flustered. You just know. That completely floored me. I don't even walk around claiming to know things. I've always been more observant than most, sure, but he's turned it into this twisted benchmark I can never meet. It's like the bar is set higher every time I try to jump it. After that conversation, I started doubting myself all over again. Maybe I am too sensitive. Maybe normal people wouldn't care about this. Maybe this is just how some couples banter and I'm too uptight. But then I think about the pit in my stomach, the way I'm constantly second-guessing myself, and I wonder if I'm gaslighting myself into staying quiet. And there are more examples piling up. My birthday last year, he swore he had something planned but then the day came and went and we just stayed home. When I asked, he said he meant to book dinner but work had been busy. Our anniversary, same story. He claimed he had thought about getting tickets to a show I wanted, but then forgot the date. Even small things, like when I mentioned craving sushi, he said he almost picked some up but then didn't. Each time, I'm left wondering if I'm unreasonable for being disappointed. Because technically, he didn't promise anything. But emotionally, he creates this build-up where I expect something, then he pulls back and makes me feel guilty for being upset. It's exhausting. I've been replaying the conversation in my head all week, trying to parse whether he's genuinely clueless, or if this is some kind of manipulation. My gut leans toward the latter, but my heart keeps wanting to give him the benefit of the doubt. I guess I just wanted to share this update because some of the comments made me feel less crazy for even noticing this pattern. Writing it out now, I see the shape of it clearer. I don't think teasing is supposed to leave you feeling this hollow. Update 2. I wanted to come back because things have escalated in a way I honestly didn't expect, and I'm starting to feel like I'm losing my grip on what's normal. Since my last post, my husband has doubled down on these tests. It's not just in the bedroom anymore. He's started slipping them into everyday life, almost like he's trying to catch me off guard at any moment. For example, we were grocery shopping, and he asked me to grab a specific item. When I came back with it, he smirked and said, "Wrong brand. You weren't paying attention." Then he laughed like it was a joke, but when I didn't laugh, he said I was too sensitive. Another time, while we were cooking, he asked me to add salt. I sprinkled a bit in, and he said, "See? You don't listen." I said a teaspoon, not a pinch. He then made a show of fixing it while shaking his head. The worst was when we were with friends. He casually mentioned that I fail his tests all the time and that it keeps things interesting. Everyone kind of chuckled, and I laughed along because I didn't want to make it awkward, but inside I felt humiliated. I finally broke down during one of these so-called tests. We were making dinner, and he asked me to taste a sauce. I said it was fine, and he suddenly got this serious face and said, "Wrong answer. You always rush. You never really think." Something about the tone, so cold, so parental, just hit me in the gut. I felt this wave of shame, like I was a little girl being scolded. I put the spoon down, went to our bedroom, and started crying. Not just tears, like, shaking, can't breathe sobbing. I hadn't cried like that in years. He came in, looked annoyed, and said, "Are you serious right now? You're being immature. You always make me out to be the bad guy when I'm just trying to help us grow." That word, immature, broke something in me. Because it's exactly what my dad used to call me whenever I cried as a kid. And suddenly I realized why all of this feels so crushing. My husband isn't just testing me. He's recreating the same dynamic I grew up with, being constantly scrutinized, never being enough, having my reactions dismissed. I told him through tears that his tests make me feel like I'm not his wife but his child, and that it's killing my self-esteem. He rolled his eyes and said, "This is why I don't open up. You twist everything. You're too fragile for real intimacy." Now I'm stuck in this horrible loop of questioning myself. Am I fragile? Am I overreacting? Or is this actually as toxic as it feels? The thing is, I want intimacy with my husband. I want to feel close to him. But I can't shake the dread now. Every interaction feels like a pop quiz I'm destined to fail. And every time he says I make him the bad guy, I feel this guilt, like I'm somehow sabotaging my own marriage. But then I think, shouldn't intimacy feel safe? Shouldn't I feel seen and loved, not evaluated? I don't know what to do. I feel like I'm living with my dad again, only now I'm an adult and supposed to know better. But my body reacts the same, tight chest, lump in my throat, tears I can't control. I don't want to lose my marriage. But I also don't want to lose myself. So Reddit, am I overreacting? Or is this as messed up as it feels? Update 3. So, things came to a head last week. I had been sitting with all of your comments, rereading them when I started doubting myself. And then it happened again. Same pattern, we're on the couch, kids are asleep, I think we're finally in a quiet, tender moment. He leans in like he's about to kiss me, I lean in too, and then he pulls back with that smug grin. I don't even know what snapped in me, but instead of laughing it off or going quiet, I just said it out loud. "Stop testing me. This isn't playful. It's cruel." His face immediately changed. He looked at me like I had just insulted him. Then came the scoff, the defensive wall. "God, you're so sensitive. I can't even joke with you anymore." I didn't argue. I didn't try to explain or cry or plead. I just said, calmly, "If this is your version of intimacy, then I don't want it." That set him off. He raised his voice, accused me of making everything serious, and then stormed out to the garage. The rest of the night was silent treatment, doors slamming, the whole house vibrating with his anger. The next morning he acted like nothing had happened. Cheerful with the kids, cracking jokes at breakfast, not acknowledging me. It was like he wanted me erased from the narrative. And I realized, this is the cycle. He gets to play, I get to carry the weight, and when I protest, I'm ruining the vibe. So I packed a bag. I told him, I need some space. I didn't ask permission. I just called my sister and said, "Can I stay for a few days?" She didn't even hesitate. Now I'm here, in her guest room, and I can finally breathe. No one is watching me with that mix of disdain and amusement. No one is withholding affection to keep me off balance. It's quiet. I can think. And what I keep circling back to is this: I have been planning everything. Not just trips, meals, schedules. I have been planning our emotional life. I set the stage for closeness. I carry the worry about whether we're connecting. I absorb the sting when he decides to make me the butt of the joke. I'm the one calculating, is tonight safe to try again? Will this be the time he doesn't humiliate me? It's exhausting. I don't think I realized how much energy I've been spending just trying to earn scraps of basic tenderness. Being at my sister's, I've noticed how light it feels when you're not constantly bracing for the rug to be pulled. When she hugs me, she just hugs me. No performance. No test. Just love. And it made me cry, because that's what I want with my husband. Or maybe I should say, that's what I wanted. I don't know if I even believe he's capable of giving it. I don't have a final decision yet. But I know this, I'm not going back until something changes. And if nothing changes, then I guess I already have my answer. Final update. I wanted to give you all a final update, because this community honestly gave me the courage to do what I needed to do. After my last post, I sat down with my husband for one more real conversation. I told him, calmly and clearly, that I was exhausted. That I couldn't keep living in this cycle of him demanding my forgiveness while refusing to do any real work on himself. I told him how humiliating it felt that he could cheat, dismiss my feelings, and then act like I was the unreasonable one for not bouncing back into his arms fast enough. His response told me everything I needed to know. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "You're just too broken. That's the problem. You'll never be happy no matter what I do." That sentence was the nail in the coffin. For years I've carried his mistakes like they were mine, blamed myself for being too sensitive, too cold, too suspicious. I twisted myself into knots trying to prove I was worth loving, worth keeping. And in that moment, I realized, I'm not broken. I was just with someone who was perfectly fine breaking me down if it meant he didn't have to look at himself. So I told him I was done. Not yelling, not begging, not prying, just done. I've contacted a lawyer and started the process for separation. I've told a few close friends, and I'm slowly building the support system I know I'll need. The kids don't know yet, but when the time comes, I'll make sure they understand this isn't their fault and that both parents love them. I won't lie, it's terrifying. This marriage has been my whole adult life, and walking away feels like stepping into an unknown void. But it's also the first time in years I've felt any real clarity. I've stopped bargaining with myself, stopped writing mental excuses for why he might change next time. I see the pattern now, the cheating, the blame shifting, the half apologies followed by demands for intimacy. It wasn't an accident, and it wasn't a one-off. It was who he chose to be. And now I get to choose, too. I choose not to stay in a home where my needs are dismissed. I choose not to raise my kids in a relationship that teaches them love is something you have to earn by swallowing disrespect. I choose myself, not in a selfish, reckless way, but in a way that finally acknowledges that I am worthy of respect, loyalty, and peace. So here's where I leave things. I am not broken. I am healing. I am walking away with dignity, and with the knowledge that I gave this marriage every chance I could. And when I look back years from now, I know I'll be proud of myself for finally choosing honesty over hope, clarity over confusion, and self-respect over fear. Thank you, Reddit, for helping me remember that I'm not crazy and I'm not alone.